Hello my quilting friends, Leah Day here with another block for the Machine Quilting Block Party. I love this blazing sawtooth block. I think it's so beautiful, and best of all, it's going to be really easy to piece. So let's get started prepping up our materials so we can learn how to piece half square triangles and flying geese units for this cool block. So the very first step to block number 2 is to mark certain pieces so we're ready to piece with them. So for our orange squares, you want to mark a diagonal line from corner to corner. And just line up a ruler, and I'm using Fons & Porter marking pencil, ceramic marking pencil. It's my favorite marking pencil for medium to dark fabrics, and it even shows up on this yellow. You also want to do the same thing for your yellow squares. It's fabric C. Go on ahead and mark a diagonal line from corner to corner on them too. Okay, so a little bit of review. We're going to first make half square triangles with our fabric B and fabric D squares. Just line these up together. We're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch 1/4 inch to both sides of that line. So I've already stitched 1/4 inch from that center line, and now I'm stitching 1/4 inch on the opposite side. So I'm just lining up that line with the edge of my presser foot, and I'm stitching on down. And you just want to be careful not to wiggle wobble as you stitch this. It's easy to kind of get distracted. It's just one of those things. Just maintain your focus as you stitch from corner to corner, and you'll be just fine. So now I'm just cutting the 2 triangles apart, and you can see we've made 2 half square triangles. You want to trim these down according to the instructions in your pattern so they're ready to put in your block. So the next step to block number 2 is to piece our flying geese units. You're going to need a rectangle of your background fabric and these little squares in fabric C, the yellow color for me at least. And we're going to stitch along that marked diagonal line to get started. So I find that it's easier to get started in the middle of the block. When you start right on that tippy corner, sometimes it wants to get sucked down into your machine. So starting from the middle seems to work a little bit better, and I'm just stitching right on that marked diagonal line. Now you might be wondering about why I keep stitching through these little scraps of fabric. They just help keep all of my thread tails nicely organized. I don't end up with those long strings. I don't waste bobbin thread. And even better, it gets my foot up to the exact right height for piecing. So as I'm sliding a piece in, it doesn't get all crumpled up and wrinkled right at the beginning. So for all of those reasons, I use these little scraps to get started piecing. So the next step is to flip down this fabric, and I just flip it down and give it a little finger press so I know it's nice and flat, and then I'm going to hit that with my iron. Just a quick press, and we have a little bit of excess fabric here. I don't want to trim away the background rectangle because that really gives us our shape, and so long as this doesn't get cut down, I know that we're going to piece an absolutely accurate flying geese unit. But we don't need this little flappy bit of the yellow fabric. It's a little extra. So I'm going to trim that down very carefully, just on that side. And that'll reduce the bulk of this unit quite a bit. So there we have 1/2 done. Now I'm going to take another square and layer it on this way. So we have the corner of the diagonal line running from this corner down to the middle, so that the 2 corners are going to overlap a little bit right here in the middle, and that's what you want. And just like before, I folded over my top fabric, given it a press, and now I'm trimming away this little bit of extra yellow fabric from beneath the top fabric. That's going to trim away, reducing the bulk, leaving a perfectly pieced flying geese unit. Give it a final press, and you're going to follow these steps to create 4 of these units for your block. So the next step to block number 2 is to piece the remaining background rectangles to the top section of our flying geese units. You want to make sure that you're matching this up with the side with 2 points, not with the side that is mostly the yellow or fabric sea color. So piece it up just like that to create a total of 4 flying geese pieced units. And now we're going to lay out the block just like this. So we have that red square right in the center and our flying geese units coming out. And this is a Sawtooth star. It's a very traditional block. It's one of my favorites actually. And we're adding to it with these beautiful half square triangles in the corners. So just like with block number 1, we're going to piece these units together into rows and then the rows together into the finished block. Refer to the block number 1 video for tips on matching these seams. I'm going to jump ahead and give you some tips on attaching the border strips next. So the center of our block is pieced and it's time to attach the borders. Now this is where a lot of quilters mentioned struggling last month because as they pieced on the borders, they lost some nice points. So let me give you some tips on how I attach the borders. Instead of placing the border on top and running it through the machine like this, flip the block over so that way you can see your seam allowances, you can see how the pieces are coming together, and then as you piece, you'll be better able to do this accurately. So I'm going to line up, I'm just lining up that top corner very carefully. I want those pieces to be just exactly lined up on top of one another. I'm going to slide it underneath the foot, and it really does help to stitch through a scrap like this, so that way your foot is lifted up slightly to the back, and also you don't have those thread tails that could knot up and create a problem for you on the back of the block. So now as you start stitching, and notice that I'm not pinning this. I'm not pinning this because I want to keep it loose. I can lift up that block and double check myself, making sure that those edges are just exactly in alignment. And then as I stitch, I'm being very careful to make sure that no fabric extends beyond the edge of my patchwork foot. It's giving me an exact 1/4 inch seam allowance. I want to make sure to maintain that. The nice thing about having the block on top is that I can see my seam allowances. I can see that I'm stitching right over that and it's not lipping up, it's not flipping over. And I can see that I'm not biting off more than I want to, which is exactly what you want. If you bite off more, you'll lop off points. That's just how it works. So as I get down here close, these strips are cut exactly the correct size. So I want to be really careful and mindful of that this should line up just exactly right. Again, I'm not going to bother pinning it. I'm just going to press firmly with my fingertips and let it guide through the machine. I'm putting just a lot of pressure right here with the tip of my finger to keep those pieces in alignment. Okay, now I'll grab another scrap and stitch through it. The nice thing with this block is that we don't have any points along the edge to lop off accidentally, but that is the method that I would use to stitch on the borders all the way around. Instead of having the strip on top, flip it over so that you have the block on top. And I promise this will be a lot more accurate and you'll be able to see your seam allowances and you won't lop off any corners. So that's it for block number 2. I really hope that you enjoyed learning how to piece this blazing sawtooth block. Even if your piecing did not come out exactly perfectly, don't worry. A lot of things get hidden when you cover it with beautiful free motion quilting, and that's what we're going to be learning next. So make sure to get your block pieced and ready to go, so we'll be ready to quilt it next week. Just in case you'd like to find the pattern for this block, you can click right here to find it at leahday.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.